This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new season of Behind the Headlines. This is our 16th year, and we're really pleased to be back. Unfortunately, Charlie Greenwald, our usual host, is on assignment and couldn't be with me today, but I'm really happy to have Dave Atkinson with me. He's an associate of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Hello, Dave.
Hey, thanks.
Welcome to year 16. You've been around for...
Sweet 16.
Been around for a lot of it. Appropriately, we're going to talk about some back-to-school issues today. We have, as our first guest of season 16, Ken Mash, who is the president of APSCUF. And APSCUF stands for the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculty. I got it right.
You actually did. That was really good.
So welcome to our new season, and we enjoy having you all the time, so welcome back.
Well, it's great to be back, and especially at this season when our faculty are back. It's work at school, and the students are all there, and everybody's excited about the future.
And everything's going smoothly so far?
Yeah, everything's going great. So I think, like I said, everybody really looks forward to that start of the new semester when everything's fresh. New students are on the university. There's a real life to the university, and it's filled, particularly at this point of the year, with a lot of energy.
So you must be particularly interested right now in the new Public Higher Education Funding Commission that's been developed. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what your expectations are of this new commission?
Yeah, so there's a commission. It was passed by the Senate to create this commission to look at higher education funding. I know that among other things, they're going to look how money is allocated in the public higher education sector to see how funding should be distributed. And so they're going to look at all kinds of things like funding formulas and also breakdown and perhaps some performance funding, which we're not real excited about.
What's performance funding?
Well, performance funding is when you look at certain kinds of measures like, whether it's graduation rates or persistence of students, and then you award additional money because of success there. The reason why we don't love those things is, as faculty, is because they tend to punish students for behaviors perhaps of administrators. So, why should it be that a university should get less money, have less money to spend on its students, because maybe things are not being done well at the university? So we have some concerns about that kind of performance funding, but our biggest concern about that is just simply the fact that public higher education in Pennsylvania is severely underfunded. And so, just moving things around is not really the solution. People have to take a hard look at Pennsylvania's commitment to this generation and say, are we doing things appropriately? The data shows that almost every measure, Pennsylvania is 47th, 48th, 49th, 50th when it comes to funding. And the U.S. News and World Report ranked Pennsylvania 50th among the states when it comes to higher education. That's not a situation that's going to lead to success. It's not going to lead to success for us to be able to provide for opportunities for working class Pennsylvanians, and we're already seeing how fewer students are able to afford to go. It's not a recipe for success when we're 49, 48, 49, 50 when it comes to measures regarding student debt. And we have students who are graduating, and instead of doing things like buying cars and buying houses and planning for the future, instead they're just giving money over to banks. And that's not good for our economy, which has an impact on every single... their parents, has an impact on every single Pennsylvania. In fact, I think it's people 50 and above are the people who are the fastest growing rate of debt. And that comes both from people returning to college to get upskilled, but it also includes people who are signing off on their kids or their grandkids on their loans. When their kids or grandkids can't repay those loans, they're suddenly on the hook and have to make choices about things like, will we pay property taxes or will we pay back the bank for this loan, and it's just not a healthy situation. And I think this is something that actually started many years ago, where we started cutting back on the amount of money that we give over to our universities. And in 2011, there was a big cut, and we've never really recovered from that. We're happy that the governor and the legislature have added money, but it has not in any way made up for the money that we had lost in the past. And in real terms, we're getting like the same amount of money we got 20 years ago, and that just does not work.
What are the expectations of this commission? I mean, what were they tasked with? What's their time frame? How are you going to be involved in the commission's work?
Yeah, from what we understand, I think they have like almost a year to do their work. They're getting started. I think even as we speak, they're starting their work. I think the expectations for them is to do something similar to what was done with K-12 education,
Right.
to come up with a funding formula of some sort. But like I said, they really must, we feel, cope or deal with this question of, what is Pennsylvania's commitment to this generation?
Well, in a way, it seems it presents an opportunity for the universities and for the people who make up the universities to educate legislators, particularly, as to what's happening on the various campuses. When I watched the budget hearings last spring, and people were saying, well, these schools aren't doing very well, their enrollment's dropping. Well, that's a demographic problem that faces every institution. It's not reflective of the performance of the state universities. And when you look inside the universities and you see what they're doing in terms of keeping students there, in terms of partnerships with the local communities, in terms of making research part of the program, and you see what the faculty members are doing beyond the job description to involve the students, to help them get full value for their time there. I think that's all part of the story that has to be told in terms of, look, this is more than just rearranging the money, as you say.
Yeah, our universities, when we compare them to similar universities across the country, do very well when it comes to graduation rates. When it comes to retention, we could always do better, and we strive to do better, but they perform really well. We set it. In recent years, we've set records for degrees conferred on students. So we're doing the work. It just makes it all that much more difficult. And you're right, there's been a decline in the number of high school graduates in Pennsylvania, and that's impacted every college and university in the Commonwealth. But what we see is that we are losing students disproportionately from the bottom 40% in terms of family income, which tells us that these tuition, I think since 2000 they've gone up, they've doubled tuition and fees. And so, it's elastic. The tuition is elastic, which means that as it goes up, fewer people can afford to go, and financial aid doesn't keep up. And it means either taking out these massive loans or just not going. And people need to remember, too, that depending on your economic situation, we might sit here in our position and say, you might leave $40,000 in debt, but, that might be manageable. But if your family income's at $60,000 a year, saying you're going to leave with 30, that looks like Mount Everest. So, everything is relative for people, and I think more and more people are making those hard choices.
So you mentioned just briefly that the budget season this year did net an increase in funding for the universities. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I imagine you're already getting geared up for next year's budget season,
right,
for more money. What are you looking for in this as the General Assembly is back this fall?
So there's an increase of 2%, which I think translates to about $9 million for the universities. That left, I think, the universities like $60 million or something short of what they said they needed to be able to do well during the year. So we're starting to see budget cuts at all of the universities. I know one university just got notice that all the budgets for all the departments cut 50%, and while they're struggling through this circumstance. So, you get to a certain point where, you just can't cut it anymore without doing significant damage to the university. And there was a study done, in I think 2012, 2013, which talked about why do students come to our universities, and they come because of the price, the cost, because it still is, even now, relatively inexpensive, and they come because of the range of programs that exist. So under with these difficult budgets, what we've seen is costs have gone up, and the amount of programs is starting to shrink down. So, the very things that attracted students to our universities are being harmed by the state's lack of commitment, really, to public higher education.
It's funny, there seems to be a sort of disconnect. So when we have business folks on the program, they say, we have trouble finding trained, reliable employees. And when we have educators on the program, they say, well, there's a lot of people who complain they're getting degrees, but they're having trouble finding work in the field for which they studied. And it seems that the employer community and the education community need to connect better so that the people who are coming out with degrees are suitable for the jobs that employers have to offer.
Yeah, I mean, we, not to contradict too much what they're saying, but our students do find jobs. And they most often find jobs in the area that they studied. It's a little bit different if you take, if your major is in humanities or social science, because there is not a direct connect path to what your job will be. But nevertheless, people succeed. Ultimately they succeed. So, we need to educate people, but we need to make that education affordable. And we need to stop acting like, and too often I hear this, that no, we need to spend our money on training for technical skills and things of that sort. Well, look, if Pennsylvania is going to succeed in the future, this is not a zero-sum situation. We need to be able to provide quality institutions, four-year higher education, community colleges that are available and affordable for students, and we have to be able to provide for training for people too. This is not a situation where you do one at the cost of the other. We have to do all of it, and particularly if we're trying to attract the good jobs of the 21st century, which are going to be high-tech and require advanced skills, we're going to need to do more to make sure we're providing for that.
Well, Ken, we want to thank you so much for being here today. I think we're going to definitely have to have you come back so you can report on the Commission's work. I think it's going to be interesting to see where this goes in the future. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's always great to be on.